Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Wednesday, January 18th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Indiana game is in 227 days, the game against Michigan in 311 days. If you want to rewind all the way back to yesterday's show, we talked about Ohio State's quarterback situation. In fact, the Buckeyes would likely be looking for someone in the portal, kind of a veteran backup to add to the roster, to supplement the two returning players and one incoming player they've got. We always hear Ryan Day talking about wanting 4 scholarship quarterbacks, so if you've only got 3, well, you're going to need a 4th. And then guess what? Later in the day, they did just that. Tristan Gebbia, who is a member of Nebraska's 2017 recruiting class, that is the same year as Jeff Okudah, Chase Young, Travion Grimes. If you remember all the way back then when those guys were in Ohio State's class, that is the same year Tristan Gebbia came out of high school, and he is still playing college football. He's heading into his 7th year. He is going to be a Buckeye in year 7, 2023. He spent the 2017 year with Nebraska, 2018 to 2022 with Oregon State. Now going to be a Buckeye this fall for his 7th season as a college football player. Marc Givler is my guest this morning. Marc, this has sort of just felt like this is the kind of guy. We didn't know who it was going to be, but we kind of knew the type of guy they were going to get. And this feels like exactly the kind of guy they really needed for this fall.
Yeah, it's perfect for what they need. You know, I think people kind of shot a little bit too high early on. You started talking about, DJ Uiagalelei, and it's like, well, that's unlikely. Someone who's got a bunch of starts at a top program under their belt, probably looking to get a 1-year, starting situation before taking their shot at the NFL. This was not going to be that type of landing spot as far as Ohio State goes. So this is, again, you said it perfectly. We assumed and kind of knew they were going to take a depth body at quarterback. We just weren't sure exactly who it might be, who fit the criteria that Ohio State was looking for. And then I think even more importantly, who was willing to look at Ohio State in a situation where they're not really going to be asked to, make a run at the starting position this fall. Perfect fit. Very Chug Gunnar Hoke-esque. Maybe a little better resume than those guys. Certainly better than Hoke's resume. He's thrown over 200 passes at the Power 5 level. So he's got some experience under his belt. He's not just a guy who sat on the bench. He has seen action. And a veteran guy. I think this is his 7th year with the transfer and the COVID and year and everything else. I think this is his 7th year. So, going to bring some maturity to the room and a veteran voice and someone who can probably, I think the young guys can learn a lot from.
Yeah, he was on the Oregon State team in 2018. He had just transferred like a week earlier, but he was on the Oregon State team that came to Ohio Stadium in 2018. I would assume he was not on the travel roster if he just transferred a week before, but he was on that team. That is how long he has been at Oregon State. But his best season with the Beavers was 2020. That was not the best year of most people's lives. That was definitely the best year of his college career, though. He played in 4 games that year, completed 62% of his passes for 824 yards, 3 touchdowns, 3 picks. He led the Beavers to a win over arch rival Oregon that year. He was the starting quarterback in that game, for a touchdown pass in that game. And, he very much seems to me like the Chris Chuganoff kind of model. Like, you're right, Gunnar Hoke really never started at Kentucky, wasn't someone who had that many reps at Kentucky. When he came over, I remember talking about his spring game stats in this case, you're talking about someone who has started at the Power 5 level the same way that Chuganoff had started at West Virginia. And, he wasn't a full season starter or anything, but he had experience. He has certainly played. Jonathan Smith runs that is not a little league offense that they run out there. That is the Beavers have a pretty nice offense. His stats are pretty solid. This is someone who, like you said, he's not coming in with the guarantee that he's going to be the starter, but this is the kind of person where you come in, you're going to get to experience probably a level of the sport that you have not experienced at Nebraska or Oregon State so far. And, is this a vault, a way to get into the coaching ranks potentially long term? I always go back to like Gardner Minshew. Gardner Minshew was going to transfer to Alabama, and before he went to Washington State, and the whole idea was he was going to go be the third string guy for Nick Saban, and parlay that into a coaching career, and ended up going to Washington State instead, and turned into a whole phenomenon with Mike Leach. But this just feels like a guy who he's going to be a little bit of a break glass in case of emergency guy for Ohio State this year. But this is potentially a really promising deal for him.
Yeah, and I want to add to Gardner Minshew's resume that he will be a Super Bowl champion here in a few weeks, so that he's got that going for him as well. So, but
well, Mark, sports betting is legal. Sports betting is legal in Ohio now, so if you really believe that, you can put some money on it. Lucky you.
I emotionally hedge, so I made a lot of money on the Giants a couple weeks ago as 2 touchdown dogs, and I made a little bit of money on Dallas on Monday night. I'm an emotional hedge kind of guy, so. Well, I got Bengals and Bills Super Bowl futures, and we're gonna let it ride. He's gonna come in. He's gonna give you great experience. Here's the thing: I think people don't really think about. If you have these 2 young guys, Devin Brown, Kyle McCord, obviously they are going to be the focal point, really, of the entire offseason when you think about it. They have a lot back at a lot of different positions, and they're gonna have to plug some things on the offensive line, but. The heartbeat of this team this offseason is going to be making, heads and tails of this quarterback situation. But at the same time, those guys can't throw every single rep in practice. Like, you need other guys to fill out your practice, or else, you're going to have, we're talking about this great quarterback battle, and we're going to have Kyle McCord and Devin Brown on the shelf in July with tendonitis or something. So he comes in, he spells them, he helps them learn the offense. And it makes so much sense for everybody on this one. It doesn't look like this is a guy with maybe NFL aspirations at this point. So yeah, you come in and hey, maybe they're really good offensively next. Maybe they hey, Youngstown State's on the schedule, Western Kentucky's on the schedule. There may be some opportunities to go out there and throw the ball a little bit next year too. So I think Ohio State's going to have an explosive offense again, and so you may get some late game opportunities as well. It makes all the sense in the world. And it allows your 2 guys that you're really gonna be riding this summer to, if you need a lighter day of throwing, that you can throw him in and he can kind of carry a practice for you if you need to kind of do some load management.
Yeah. And he is someone who, if you come in and you have we have seen Ohio State get to the 3rd quarterback at times in the past, in the course of a season, and, needing that guy either to go win the national championship in the case of Cardale Jones, or just, hey, the starter gets hurt and then the 3rd guy is all of a sudden the backup who is coming in the 3rd quarter or 4th quarter against Rutgers. So yeah, there are potentially some snaps out there for him. But yeah, and you have also seen Ohio State backup quarterbacks. Kenny Guyton has parlayed his time as an Ohio State backup quarterback and occasional starter and or late inning fireman off the bench into a pretty nice college football coaching career. So he'll be definitely a very positive addition for Ohio State in terms of what they need in that quarterback room this year. And Kevin and I talked yesterday about, okay, so that's your third guy. Lincoln Kienholz not even coming in until the summer, so you're probably not going to see a whole heck of a lot of him this fall just because he's not coming in until the summer. But let's talk for a minute about those first 2 guys. And to me, this is the most wide open Ohio State quarterback race that I've seen. We talked yesterday about, is it the Dwayne Haskins, Joe Burrow one? Does it go back to the JT Barrett, Cardale Jones one? Many of the recent, quarterback battles have not really felt like has felt like you sort of knew what the result was going to be well in advance of the battle actually being officially, the winner officially being announced. This to me feels like, people are sort of calling their shot on this, but it feels like they're almost just kind of like picking a side. And then if they're right, they can say, ha ha, I was right. Look at me. And if they're not, they can say, well, some things changed. But this to me feels like this is a pretty wide open battle going into the spring, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's the most wide open since Cardale and JT. Even Burrow Haskins, between what happened in the Michigan game for Haskins And just what you were hearing kind of behind the scenes of like, they're enamored with Haskins, they're enamored with his arm. They had lost some games under JT Barrett where the passing game wasn't really explosive enough, and the passing game kind of let them down, and Haskins had this huge arm. And so it was never a slam dunk for Haskins, but it always kind of felt like that's where things were heading. I don't know that I get a great sense for where things are heading. I think you have to give McCord a slight advantage for a couple of reasons. One, he's been in the system longer. Two, if it's a tie, I would think McCord gets the tiebreaker on experience, on roster management, on everything else that goes along with it. And he obviously has great chemistry, not only with Marvin Harrison Jr., that's obvious. They played together for several years in high school. But he's got chemistry with the other main receivers on this team through running, with the twos and the scout team as a lot of these guys did early in their Ohio State careers. So he has, to me, a bit of a built-in advantage. But Devin Brown, very talented, a little more athletic. I think maybe that has been a little overblown. Like I kind of said the other day, I said, Devin Brown is not Justin Fields and Kyle McCord is not Elvis Gerbach. Like, McCord is a willing runner and Brown has a little bit more mobility, but it's not night and day. But it does help Brown. I think he's again, having that escapability factor, I think will help him. So it's going to be interesting to me, but I agree. I said, JT Cardale to me is the last one coming off the national championship year when that whole debate and who, was JT get his job back. I think that is the last time I've been this unsure of who the quarterback was going to be at Ohio State for the season opener.
All right, so this is 2 days in a row talking about the Ohio State quarterback battle and the Ohio State quarterback position. I have a strong suspicion it will not be the last time we talk about the Ohio State quarterback position before we get into spring ball. But there are still some changes to come, likely before we get to spring, whether it's additions or subtractions to the roster. Again, the transfer portal window closes today, end of the day, January 18th. So after that, if you are not in the portal, then you're going to have to wait until May to transfer. So you can potentially still add guys after that, but at least you'll know here are the guys who have departed the program, before the next transfer portal window. So we'll have a little more clarity in Ohio State's roster going into the spring. After that point, we'll start taking a little bit of a more holistic look at the team and who they lost and who they brought in and what it all means for this year. So we've got all that fun stuff to talk about later in the week. And a fun place to talk about all of that stuff is at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Marc just hosted an all-day chat on Tuesday on our board, answering a ton of questions. Some about a topic we're going to be probably talking about a little later on in the week about the NCAA not passing a rule when everyone thought they were going to pass a rule, and how that's going to impact Ohio State's coaching plans for the coming season and all that kind of stuff. So lots of that, lots of questions on recruiting, of course, since it is Marc, since Marc is one of our recruiting analysts. Lots of great questions and answers, road trip stories, all sorts of good stuff on the huddle board at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Sign up today to become a member, get access to all of that, get access to all of our chats, all of our great content, all of our insider analysis reports. Alex Gleitman has been very busy as well. Marc was very busy, shared a lot of stuff on the transfer portal in a post earlier this week. A lot of great stuff there. So sign up today at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.